how did it develop?
Yeah, Phil, we've really never seen a case anything like this. Let's make sure we understand, first of all, who are the parties here? Now, the plaintiffs, the parties who brought this lawsuit are the Republican AGs from the states of Louisiana and Missouri. The defendants, the people who they've sued, are essentially the entire executive branch of the federal government, past and present. There are 54 named defendants here, including the president, Dr. Fauci, who's retired, the Surgeon General, and essentially every meaningful federal agency, including HHS, CDC, DOJ, and so forth. Now, here's the allegation that the plaintiffs make. They say that the defendants, quote, colluded with and or coerced social media platforms to suppress disfavored speakers' viewpoints and content. Now, I should mention the allegations go back to 2017, which actually started in the Trump administration, but the vast majority of the focus here is on the Biden administration. The decision that was issued yesterday includes hundreds of examples of the administration, various officials reaching out to social media platforms about certain articles and certain content that was posted. But the most common areas of focus in the decision are really these three things: COVID, mask requirements, vaccines, the efficacy, the 2020 election, and election security in general, and of course, Hunter Biden. The plaintiffs allege that the defendants here were trying to unfairly, illegally influence the way social media companies coverage and post coverage of these issues. So now here's the defendants' response. They say, first of all, this is a legitimate government function. We're supposed to look out for the safety and the well-being of the public, and we're supposed to be fighting against what we perceive as disinformation. The defendants also argue there was no coercion or suppression. No one was punished for what they put up. No social media company was ever faced with any penalties. And finally, they argue there was no injury. Nobody was hurt. And this issue of redressability, they say this is not something that a judge can monitor, can police, and it's beyond the court's kin to get into this.
Walk me through the injunction itself, because this was not dry, legalese, boring. This was interesting writing to read, along with what it actually meant.
It's a remarkable ruling. Now, the plaintiffs have won at this phase. It's a preliminary injunction, meaning for now, it's on hold. And the judge found in favor of the states and against the Biden administration. Now, the court ruled that if proven, by the way, a very big if proven, the present case arguably involves the most massive attack against free speech in United States history. This is a very high-minded opinion, by the way. The judge cites Voltaire, he cites Orwell, he cites George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, Benjamin Franklin. Now, the judge has said, here's what this means. There needs to be a line of separation between essentially the entire executive branch, White House on down, and all the major social media companies, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, and Google. Now, the judge has said there is to be no contact regarding protected free speech. Okay, but what does that mean? Can there be any contact at all? The judge gave some guidance on that, not particularly clear, but the judge said these things are not protected free speech, meaning you can have contact relating to national security, cybersecurity, security threats, and criminal activity. But again, where's the line? What does or does not fall within the heading of national security? And again, this is just a preliminary injunction, so it's on hold for now, but it's going to go up the line.
So as it goes up the line, what is the path? Like, what happens next? But also the judge himself.
Yeah.
Everybody's pointing out, well, he was a Trump-appointed judge. Okay, but he was confirmed, 98 to nothing. What do we know about him, his rulings in the past, and what that means going forward?
Yeah, so this is the chief judge of the district court in Louisiana. He was actually a state judge for about a decade. He was then nominated by President Trump in 2017. He was confirmed by the Senate 98-0. His most notable decision before this one is he blocked the Biden administration's vaccine mandate back in 2021. So here's where we are. We are at the trial court level, district court for the Western District of Louisiana. If and when, and I think it's a safe bet that they will appeal, the Biden administration will take this up to the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals. Really important to note. We have 13 different courts of appeals in our federal system. The Fifth Circuit is known as the most conservative ideologically, but judicially, I'm not sure how conservative this ruling is. Whoever loses there can then try to get the case up to the U.S. Supreme Court. Of course, it's up to the Supreme Court whether and which cases they take. So we've got a lot of important high-stakes litigation ahead.
These last 2 days have been extremely beautiful, not only because of how good they've been working for me, but also all the great stories and content in which we could speak about and once again point at and laugh at the falling apart of the neoliberal establishment. I mean, as soon as I saw this, I saw that clip from CNN of all the liberals melting down, like, but the Biden administration needs to talk to Twitter and Facebook so that they could silence and suppress anyone talking bad about Biden. This is a work of art, and I'm loving every minute of it because I'm seeing liberals panic because I guess they need Big Brother to tell them what to do, which is ironic.
And Kit, to your point, the meltdown is exactly what you just mentioned. It's the fact that they're not going to be able to manipulate social media during this election season, and that was key to their strategy of winning. And this ruling puts that on hold, because if some of the earlier sort of like newscasts on this earlier this morning, they were talking about it like, you know, how does this affect the election? Like, why are you guys leading to that way unless this is, you know, what having this in place prevents you from doing? Like, that's the only reason you would even think, well, what does this have to do with the election at all? But I did see that on MSNBC, and I think it was CNN, maybe.
Yeah, CNN was having a little hissy fit. But, you know, what he pointed out in the video, because I know might be a little bit more in the video to be played, if not. But what I found interesting is when they brought up things that you couldn't talk about, the COVID pandemic, the election, and Hunter Biden. Again, throughout all of 2020 and 2021, you couldn't talk about that unless you were to purposely upload it onto Rockfin or Rumble or any of the other alternative streaming platforms. And we got hit hard. I mean, in regards to Hard Lens Media, 8 times between 2020 up until I think a little bit into the late of 2022. 8 times getting shadow banned, censored. That was never under Trump. Yes, we had to be careful under Trump. There were certain things we had to be careful of, but it's interesting in comparison. Under the 4 years of Trump and under the 4 years of Biden, we've had to tiptoe around the censorship and the YouTube guidelines and changing guidelines. More so under a Democratic administration that supposedly said that they care about free speech. I mean, you guys at RBN were suspended for 1 week unfairly. Kim Iverson's interview with RFK Jr. taken down. Missy Winston's interview on Indie News Network was taken down. And again, go on and so forth. Even Mike Tyson's interview that he did with RFK Jr. 2 years ago, taken down. I have never seen this massive wave of censorship, and seeing the absolute breakdown from the liberal establishment, or as you like to call them, the professional managerial class, seeing them panic because they no longer have control of the steering wheel, and they cannot be behind the steering wheel because they want to make sure that everyone's afraid and voting Democrat. This, even though this is happening right now, I'm hesitant to say that this is some good news, because I'm waiting for the rug to be pulled right underneath my feet.
Right. By appeal, by going to appeal and it's being expedited, and then, oh no, we're going to be able to suppress. But the idea that people are cheering about this just is a complete, it's the, I don't know what you call it. It's not Stockholm syndrome, but it's some syndrome where you start to believe what your oppressor, what the oppressor, I should say, or oppressor is, what they're saying. And that's what it feels like. Some of these cowbell sort of leftists, they're just, it's unreal how they bought the Ukraine stuff, and then they're buying reasons for censorship like disinformation. Just think back, Kit. Take us back to 2019, 2018.
Yes.
When this discussion of, like, people would just say stuff all the time. It was none of this, you can't say this and you can't say that. Not to this extent. It just seems, well, surrounding the pandemic, they just went, out of control with it.
What I would say, since because Hard Lens Media didn't really officially get onto YouTube until like late 2018, I want to say. I mean, we did post some videos there, but we didn't do our show as much until late 2018, 2019. But I remember when we were on radio and we saw the initial stepping stones, or the beginning stages of censorship, and that was what happened to Alex J. And that's all I want to say, because I got to be careful how to say his name, but I think we all know who I'm talking about.
Wow.
When he was taken out in 2018, when he was removed off all those social media platforms, Daniel and I both said on the radio way back in the day, hey everyone, this isn't anything to cheer about. This is the beginning stages of how they can remove people, and not only that, censor individuals. Now, I'm not a fan of Alex J. However, If they could do that to him, they could do that to anybody. And who else was put on the chopping block? Activists, pro-Palestinian groups who wanted to end the Israeli apartheid, Green Party, libertarians, former Bernie Sanders pages. All of them were being hit hard, especially on Facebook and Twitter to some extent. So when you say look back, I now look back at it and more as like, oh, wow, this was the beginning when it was really starting to intensify. And then comes 2020 and the floodgates open, more censorship, more suppression, demonetization. In 2020, we were shadow banned for 6 months. I mean, there was like I said this before in your show, but Daniel and I were having a very serious conversation about just wrapping up shop because it was that bad. And we were hurting financially because of what YouTube and its quote unquote guidelines have been doing. So I welcome this, and I welcome the panic by the Biden-Harris administration and by the liberals, because guess what? This screwed over so many people, and many of our colleagues in independent media are damaged to the point of no return, to where even if their channels were reinstated, they have to rebuild their algorithm, they have to rebuild their channel and content, coming up with new stuff and making sure that their channel is viable, because this is what the censorship has done. And all these liberals cheering for it, I just want to say, it's only a matter of time before you're putting that on that chopping block. And, if you want Big Brother to tell you what to think and do, that tells me that you're not a serious person and I need to treat you like a moron. I'm not calling you a moron. I'm going to have to treat you like a moron.
All right, so let's listen to both of our friend of our network, and I'm sure a friend of your network.
Yeah, he's been on my show. I got to get him back on again.
Yeah, Nico House does these great videos. Nick does these videos too, and sort of almost very similar. Maybe it's a play on Nico's videos. Is this like a Is this like TikTok style? Do you even know how to do this? I don't know how you.
You know what? Like I said, I'm probably gonna. Like I said, I need to talk to Indy because he's been helping me out with some of my technical stuff in the background.
Okay.
So shout out to INN News and Reef Breland. They've been doing some good stuff, but I think this is like TikTok kind of stuff. So
okay, yeah, no, I had no idea how to do that. I wish I could.
I'm an old man. I'm an old man. Old man Kit.
All right, so let's listen to Nico House. He covers this in about under a minute and a half.
In what is seemingly a rare victory as of late, a judge comes out and says that the Biden administration can no longer work with officials in social media companies to limit free speech or remove accounts online. And of course, the New York Times seems to have a problem with this. Now, in their post on Twitter, they say that the ruling could curtail efforts to fight disinformation. Now, call me old-fashioned, but isn't it the media's job to fight information with information? Like, can anyone give me a single point in the history of ever? Has it ever worked out for literally anyone when we put the government in charge of controlling the information that is disseminated in a public space or public forum like social media? What makes this even more frustrating is how the New York Times tried to take the issue of free speech and make it a partisan problem. Understand, once again, and I say this all the time, if free speech is limited by one administration and given permission to be limited by the courts, it will then be limited by the next administration that is not playing for your team. How fucking hard is this to understand, given that we have a history of this type of thing happening?
I love how it's so concise, but the point that he makes at the end, you're cheering for censorship when your team is in power. When your team is not in power, it's not going to look so nice. And this is why people that are cheering for this, it just doesn't make sense. Do you think the Republicans are not seeing this? The Trump supporters, the people that support conservative politics, you think they're not waiting for their turn so they can be all in your grill too? Go ahead, Kit.
Well, I mean, I've given this warning to a lot of vote blue, no matter who people, like, because again, like, there was a lot of people who I would used to associate with from 2018 and going on forward. And since then, everyone's acting holier thou and puritanical because that's to resist Trump. But I remember giving this warning, like, everyone's in such a rush to censor Trump's voice and his supporters and volunteers. But wait, you're becoming the very thing you want to fight against. You should be for free speech, and you should be willing to debate people of different ideologies. And if you are so smart and intelligent and you believe that the facts are on your side, then you must face off against said person, because in your mind, oh, this person's speaking, oh, well, they got to be stopped. Well, silencing isn't going to stop. And I remember watching the CNN meltdown where everyone was, no, it wasn't CNN, but it was on Squawk Box. That's on CNBC, where the main host was saying Twitter used to be this terrible, terrible place. Twitter's always been a cesspool. Twitter's always been a place of sewage and waste. That's how it's always been. So this whole idea of, oh, and then when Trump and them got away, Trump and his supporters didn't disappear. That's a child's notion. Make the bad thing go away, and the bad thing will be away forever. No. Those Trump supporters are still here. And when you try and silence people, guess what's happening in people's mindsets? When I'm in power, I'm going to shut you up. So I'm not going to take any of these liberals seriously, especially when they're protesting the street against Trump, when you're saying, oh, he's going to censor us, censor this. I've had to deal with more censorship under this administration than I did under Trump's administration. And yes, there was censorship under Trump. There was.
Yeah,
but not to this level and not to this point to where I have to worry about one, taking care of my editor phase, making sure that I inform Daniel, my colleague, that, hey, Hard Lens Media is still running, because I have a group of people that I have to help take care of. And Hard Lens Media is also part of our studio. And this has been on my mind more so than when we first started under Trump. And if that doesn't frighten anybody here, and if that doesn't even make any vote blue, no matter who person, think twice about how bad the censorship is under Biden, I don't know how else to help you but except to treat you like a moron. Because now that, again, this is being challenged, especially with this administration, I welcome it, because in 2020, and I want to be careful with my words here, Twitter and Facebook were both accompanied or approached by government agencies in regards to covering up the Hunter Biden laptop story. Mark Zuckerberg admitted that in an interview with Joe Rogan, and we saw that thanks to the brave work of Matt Taibbi through the Twitter files. So, again, why was that story censored? Anybody who tried to share that story in 2020, they couldn't on their Twitter or Facebook accounts, and you couldn't even speak about it on YouTube at all. And now that story's been proven true. It's factual. There's evidence there. So now all this stuff about censoring, it doesn't add up. So to the YouTube guidelines, to all the social media guidelines and the corporate media telling us what to think and how to feel, it deserves to be criticized. And this administration has proven that it should not be anywhere near social media or dictating facts to people. This also tells me too, especially the liberal media, who, I don't mean to cut you off, but with the liberal media,
no, go ahead.
who's so quick to say, oh, this is terrible, because CNN's saying that this is terrible and New York Times is saying that this is terrible. You know what that tells me? Those media outlets are telling the American people and everybody watching RBN right now, corporate media is saying to you that you're too stupid to figure things out, that you need someone to hold your hand to read the facts, and that you are not intelligent enough to understand the comings and goings within the political nightmare that is neoliberalism here in America. That's what New York Times is saying to you. That's what CNN is saying to you. That's what MSNBC is saying to you. They're saying to all of you watching right now that you're too stupid. That's what they're saying.
And that's sort of the point that I was making earlier. It's like what happened pre this whole sort of era? Like literally, this was just a few years ago. There was none of this. Oh, you're saying disinformation, anti-vax people. It was a movement of anti-vax like early 2000s.
Yeah,
that's when I even knew about it. That's how I found out about it. I was walking in my neighborhood when I was living in Long Beach at the time. And some guys was like, hey, man, have you heard about what's going on with vax? And that's how I found out. He was one of those activists walking his dog in the neighborhood. And I'm just saying, like, and it was no like, oh, you got to stop saying this, stop saying that. It was like, you say what you say. You got your receipts. I got my receipt. Let people for themselves. This is so like tyrannical. It's so like authoritarian to me.
I would say the reason why things got as bad as they did, and I wouldn't say under at least Trump, but when Trump ascended to the presidency, because let's face it, Trump in 2016 during the primary, now looking back at it, it's kind of funny just how crazy people were, because Trump was saying everything off the hip. And this is not an endorsement of Trump, but it caused a lot of liberals to panic and get triggered. And what I've come to realize is that Trump was exposing what a lot of these liberals, these diehard vote blue no matter who Democrats, how they really feel. See, Trump was able to act out what a lot of these liberals want to act out themselves because they're not good people. You know, to quote Malcolm X about the liberal, they're the fox in the hen house. You don't trust. I think that's the correct quote. Or did I misinterpret that quote?
No, that's it's very similar, but yeah, you don't leave a fox in the hen house is similar to what it says. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So and you expect betrayal from a lot of these white liberals, and so many people got triggered by it. They were like, well, we can't have anybody else talking like this, and now we got to speak out. And a lot of people felt afraid, and I think they overreacted under this administration, at least under Trump's administration, because of how off kilter he was and how he spoke without being censored and how he more or less, dare I say it, probably was the most transparent president in U.S. history, especially when he tells you, hey, why we're in Iraq or why we're in Syria, it's because of the oil. I mean, that was the most honesty we've ever got in regards to foreign policy by any president, be it Democrat or Republican.
That's one of the reasons, Kid, they don't want to have him back.
Yeah.
Not because his policies aren't necessary, because he speaks frankly about imperialism without the mask on. He doesn't, he's like, hey, we're running it, so why can't I just say he doesn't get, no. We're supposed to be talking about freedom and democracy. You get what I'm saying? He doesn't get it, and that's why, or he doesn't play that. Maybe he refuses to play that type of game, but that's one of the reasons, along with now the added reason of he's against the Ukraine war. Imagine him being elected. What are weapons manufacturers going to do if he lives out his rhetoric? Now, he may not live out his rhetoric.
Yeah, exactly.
But I'm just saying, if he does, what are they going to do?
But, also if we look at people, because again, you brought up a very good point. It wasn't this bad because people were at least allowed to have a conversation. But I think as the Trump administration was continuing on during those 4 years, a lot of people built a name and brand for themselves. And this is what I talk about, the social justice warrior industrial complex, where a lot of people, a lot of activists rose to prominence, got a lot of following on social media, got that coveted blue check mark or whatever, be it on any of the platforms. And it was a way for them to say, okay, now that I'm in charge, I'm going to dictate how the discourse is going to happen, because you have a lot of bad faith actors. You have a lot of people who built these movements and organizations that, revealed themselves to be fraudulent, or that eventually became corrupted and co-opted by a Democratic Party. Case in point, Time's Up, Me Too, Black Lives Matter, and even all these groups that were supposed to help out the kids in cages. Those kids are still in cages. Hey, AOC, are you going to go down to the border and protest? Yeah, probably not. She's not going to do that. She will never, ever do that.
Not at all.
And so it's just, I think people really then wanted to covet their position and be the only one talking and be the authoritative source. And if anyone were to challenge them or their perspective, then that person needs to be censored and silenced, because now notice how the discourse is changing. All the Puritans who were at least rose to prominence under Trump, now they're either gone, irrelevant, or people have finally figured out that a lot of these quote unquote resistance people were nothing but frauds in the first place, which is something we need to see. And I do hope, again, that maybe this is a sign of good things to come, and maybe the censorship, the jackboot, will be off our necks. But I'm always preparing for the worst, and I'm waiting for the hammer to drop, the rug to be pulled underneath my feet, and we're right back to square one, and got to tiptoe around the eggshells again.
Yeah, because when we ask ourselves, and I'll get to this clip everybody's waiting for. I'll get to this clip in just a second, but yeah, actually, let me play it before I make that point, because it encompasses this. So this is CNN, and to your point, they were having a hissy fit. This is earlier. So we saw the intro clip where they had time to sort of prepare a segment, sort of a rebuttal segment. How they do the news is so like we're in a courtroom instead of it being news, because they're trying to convince you of something instead of inform you. But let's listen.
To say, quote, during the COVID-19 pandemic, a period perhaps best characterized by widespread doubt and uncertainty, the United States government seems to have assumed a role similar to an Orwellian ministry of truth. He also goes on in this injunction to quote our founding fathers. But the White House is saying that any communication that they had with these social media companies was in the best interest of the American public, especially during the pandemic, trying to combat misinformation around COVID-19, vaccines, and masks. The White House also saying that they believe that social media companies need to be aware of the content that is on their platforms, but it is up to the social media companies to decide what to do with it. Now, this judge, Judge Doty, who is a Trump appointee, has yet to rule on this case, Dana. But this injunction is a big win for these states and these two attorney generals who initially brought this lawsuit, who had these concerns about the Biden administration's communication, especially during the pandemic, Dana, with these social media companies.
Okay, thank you so much for that report. Joining me around the table, CNN's David Chalian and former federal prosecutor
he's terrible.
Shan Wu. This is such a fascinating legal and political discussion. Let's just start with the legal, Shan. And I want to read more of what the judge said. This targeted suppression of conservative ideas is a perfect example of viewpoint discrimination of political speech. American citizens have the right to engage in free debate about the significant issues affecting the country. The evidence produced thus far depicts an almost dystopian scenario. I mean, it is understandable.
This is actually the language we use all the time, kid. And to see it in the court filings, they are so like taken back, like the language, the Orwellian Ministry of Truth, and this one, they are just like, wow, like taken back. Your thoughts, sir?
Look, I understand. I want to have hope that that if there's some relief on the companies, on like YouTube and Twitter, etc., on what could be said and what could be shared, that eventually we do get the return of ideas and a free exchange of ideas. I mean, it would be nice. It is Orwellian. But there's something else that I think is being overlooked. And I wish I mentioned it earlier. And that is when corporate media was really hemorrhaging in regards to the views. And this was before 2016, when they were losing viewership in mass. And it looked like corporate media was going to be dead until Donald Trump, basically gave them a boost. Right. Corporate media had to bully its way onto YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, because that's when the first Adpocalypse. I don't know if you remember that incident when it first take place, when they these media outlets wrongly smear PewDiePie. He was wearing a British bombardier outfit, but yet the big brain people at Vice and BuzzFeed and Vox and a few other places, I think Huffington Post, were saying that he was wearing a Luftwaffe uniform. And again, British bombardier and Luftwaffe uniform look completely different, two different things altogether. And it was a way for them to twist the arm of social media so that they can get control of that AdSense, so they get in the views. And that was pretty Orwellian, because then corporate media, as well as big tech, were able to dictate what could be seen by the consumer. And there was a major point, and still is relevant today, where if you were to watch RBN or Jimmy Dore or Hard Lens, you're going to be offered a suggestion, hey, watch CBS, CNN, or Fox News, watch MSNBC, or anything like that nature. And I welcome the fact that finally this conversation is happening, to where we could break the mindset, or use it at expose and show the American people that our government and big tech, and to some extent corporate media, were enacting big brother policies in order to help people, I say air quote, help people to think the way they want them to think. Right. Don't think for yourself. Follow our orders and obey our commands, and just comply. That's all they wanted to do, is have people comply. And now that compliance is being broken, I think we could see a rise of more free thinkers and speakers rise up. And I hope that that's the case. And maybe finally the chains of this oppression is lifted off of us. Maybe I'm overthinking it, but I know you want to add in here too.
Well, I would just say, like, liberals think because, we're on the right side of these issues, we have the correct answer on issues.
Are they, though?
But this is what they think. They think, we're the right side with healthcare, of affirmative action. So if you'll just do what we say, we can make everybody, but they want to force what they think is goodwill onto people. And that's what it feels like. They feel like authoritarian is good. Like, so for example, with COVID and all that stuff, they feel like being authoritarian about that is good because it's for the good of the people. They feel like censoring people who think something, have a different opinion about a vaccination is good because it's helping. So they think their authoritarianism is coming from the left, which doesn't make it authoritarianism, but it's the same thing.
You know, it's interesting you say that they think they're on the right side of history. I think they can say that they think they're on the right side of history, but with regards to follow through, I've never seen any of these liberals have any follow through. They just give words. Like, again, when we played that video of Ayanna Presley saying to people, "You are strong. We are strong together. We'll do that." Whatever she was saying in that video, that word salad because of what happened with student debt. And okay, you're saying something that I maybe theoretically agree with, but what's the action? What's the overall plan? Oh, wait, you don't have a plan. I think these liberals just are faking it through the numbers, and I think maybe in somewhere in the back of their mind they have deluded themselves into believing that they're a good person or that they do care about the issues. But if they did, they should be raising the ruckus. I mean, when we look at the Freedom Caucus, they get what they want. They always get what they want, and it's incredible to see that follow through. I don't agree with the Freedom Caucus, but I have to say I'm impressed with the fact that okay, they say they want this. And they get it. I don't see Bernie Sanders or AOC doing that. And
you have to. No, go ahead. No, go ahead. I'll finish when you're done.
Well, and then even then, I'm looking because again, what happens is when I see conversations like this happen, my brain goes back to memories of when we used to do content in the street with a Galaxy S7 cell phone way back in the day, but even before we got into radio. And I remember this one time I had this opportunity to interview Kshama Sawant. This was in Chicago, I think, when she first got elected into office, early 2018. That was a big deal for her, I think, back in the day. I might be wrong on the dates, but I remember there was this huge event with all these social justice groups, activists, and everything else. And I'm not disparaging activists, but at least the people who I saw here in Chicago are mediocre. And I've lost a lot of respect for a lot of people. But I remember even trying to interview some of the main speakers there. And all the main organizers were doing this huge shield wall, like, well, no, you can't be criticizing them or asking them difficult questions. You can't do this. You can't do that. And I'm like, well, isn't this defeating the whole purpose? I mean, we need to ask, like, okay, what's the plan? And, you're not allowed to talk to them. I don't think I've been able to speak to Kshama Sawant and have her on my show numerous times, but in Chicago, all these liberals and activist groups were just, no, can't talk. It could help Trump or the Republican insiders who are maybe here. And I'm like, are you that paranoid that a Trump supporter is going to waste time out of the day to come to a socialist event? Okay, great. In Chicago, of all places. All right, fine. I guess so. I guess they're going to go to the subway that has that's open at 2 a.m. then when it's like negative 20 degrees outside here in Chicago. But again, I'm relieved to hear these conversations taking place. And now I have to wonder, all these people who are telling us, oh, you can't talk this way, you can't interview these people, where are they at now? That's where I'm going at, because it's just my brain is playing this trick on me, or like at least it keeps on bringing up all these incidents where, all those people I spoke to now, where are they?
And tying in what you're saying here and getting back to the video, this guy right here, he is the quote unquote legal experts that comes in various cases to say he's this high mighty guy. I think he used to be a district attorney or something like that. I can't remember. A U.S. attorney. I'm sorry. So he comes in as I'm the expert. So what I think, even though I have never been a judge, what I think is what the law should be. And that's what they bring these lawyers on, which is so disingenuous. Everybody knows lawyers argue two different points, and just because you have an opinion doesn't make it law. It's your opinion. So let's continue with this segment.
That we as a society want to be careful in limiting free speech. It's also understandable that we as a society want to be careful about allowing conspiracies to just grow and metastasize and really hurt American culture.
Oh, absolutely.
You see there's two paths she described. You see how the first path of freedom had very little adjectives, had no adjectives in that path. But when she went down the path of censorship, she said, what's going to happen? And you heard all the adjectives she used. So she's sort of showing her own hand, or at least the people she represents, her donors and all of these people in the ruling class. Is really quite disgusting, but it is because think about it. If you have a path that has adjectives like freedom busting, I'm just choosing some new adjectives. Freedom busting, smelly, stinky. Why would you want to go down a path with those adjectives? So just subconsciously, it's kind of making people go, yeah, we do want to stop all that stuff if we don't censorship. You see, it's very clever in the propaganda. Let's continue.
Agreed.
Here. I'm looking for the button. There it goes.
This is a very silly ruling.
Actually, let me rewind it 15 seconds so you can hear it.
Understandable that we as a society.
So the two paths she's going to describe.
Dystopian scenario. I mean, it is understandable that we as a society want to be careful in limiting free speech.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's the description of the path, the first path. Now let's listen to the second one.
It's also understandable that we as a society want to be careful about allowing conspiracies to just grow and metastasize. And
like
really
RussiaGate, like RussiaGate, a conspiracy theory that was allowed to metastasize in our political atmosphere, which has helped contribute to the most bloodthirsty war we've had on our planet in quite some time, and that is, again, the war in Ukraine. Again, that is a conspiracy theorist, and thanks to the Durham report, the Mueller report, and so many other stories that have come to light. Again, Russia had no influence or weight or power in the 2016 election, and that any ties of Donald Trump to Russia was false information, and the FBI didn't do its goddamn job, and that Hillary Clinton lost because she was a piss poor candidate. These are facts. So again, Rachel Maddow helped contribute to RussiaGate. You know what? I'm even throw them out here. Majority Report and TYT did that too. CNN, Vice, Vox, BuzzFeed, CBS, ABC, New York Times, Washington Post, Huffington Post. They all contribute as a conspiracy theory. I wonder if they're ever going to be held accountable, because it's easy for them to say, oh, conspiracy theorists. The major media outlets that I just mentioned were promoting a big conspiracy theory that has been proven to be false. And yet, how many times were we all vilified by people who said, "Oh, you don't support RussiaGate? Well, then I guess you're a Putin, or you're a racist, or you're a sexist or misogynist.
You're on Putin's pay list, or what is it?
Putin's payroll.
Payroll, yeah. I used to get that a lot when I was even pre like RBN, or at that time FHL, FHL. I was getting that just off my just regular sort of tweets. But let's listen to the go ahead,
because even then there was a point where and again, I want to be careful saying this word, but there was a point where even me and Daniel were called like I wouldn't say like white supremacists, but like, let's remember the political forces that were in the Third Reich. They're the party can't say, because again, you got to be careful how you say it on YouTube. I think it's one of those words now. But again, and I'm like, well, wait a minute. Why are you calling me these names? Just because I don't agree with you, I'm automatically associated with the military force in the Third Reich? Like, you have no argument because I don't agree with RussiaGate? That doesn't add up. And it should tell you that all these people who were panicking, the vote blue no matter who people, were never serious in the first place.
And think about the context of RussiaGate in the broader sense. Let's go back to 2014 and think about what the ruling class, specifically the Democratic side of the ruling class, had plans for that was foiled by Trump. 2014-15, there's the coup in Ukraine, right? 2 years later, what was supposed to happen? RussiaGate is happening. Hillary Clinton was supposed to win as RussiaGate is happening, right? Which this war we're in now was supposed to happen like 7 years ago. 7 years ago was the expectation. That's why this war looks so like we kind of just stumbled into it, because
Oh my
the
God.
plans were different. RussiaGate was to build a chance to go to war with Russia.
You want
Go ahead.
you want to know what else that was supposed to happen? And I'll never forget this too, because this is before I really got politically involved, but during the final twilight years of the Obama administration, he made an infamous music little number with Jimmy Fallon, and it's and in one of the lyrics, Obama mentions TPP, because TPP was supposed to pass under Hillary Clinton too. That was another thing that was supposed to take place, and it didn't under Trump. And I'll never forget that too, because it was so cringe. If you type it up on YouTube, Jimmy Fallon, Obama singing, Obama mentions in his lyrics, TPP, you know me, like that. Like, why are you going to talk about why are you promoting TPP? Why are you doing that, Obama? Again, that's another thing that was supposed to take place. It's just interesting where we're at now. So.
Let's comment on these two comments here. Yes, Nick, I didn't know you didn't know that. Sam Cedar was or is, I don't know if he still works the comic scene. He was a stand-up comic. Oh. Yes, I know you're thinking like, wow, what jokes is he telling? How is he funny? I haven't seen, I've seen video, but not the sound. I just don't listen. But I've seen him on stage in old videos. So yes, and then there was this one. These MFers are acting like the Twitter files don't exist, to get back to the video. Yes, this is the first thing I was thinking when I was listening to these. And shout out to Abiding 71, who's always in the audience and all of our community. But this is exactly what I was thinking during. I was like, wait a minute, why are you guys acting like the Twitter files when all that stuff come out that the government was forcibly coercing, with the threat of some sort of punishment or making some sort of law, or taking, I forget the name of the thing that gives them a loophole, or I forget what it's called, but making threats. It's just so disingenuous to act like that didn't exist, but they have to stick to the script, Kit, because when it came out, they act like it was a nothing burger. So they're not going to jump to it now that nothing burger has turned into a court injunction. They can't act like that nothing burger exists now, and that's why they look so phony and so this is not even real.
Do you want to know why it's going to look even phonier? I could see corporate media doing this if this keeps on progressing legally. Corporate media is going to bring up the Twitter files. It's going to be like that kid who copied your homework. And they somehow snuck into your backpack and copied your homework. So you're like, no, I did the answers too. Look, I did this work too. Like, it's verbatim. Like, everything looks exactly the same. And so Matt Taibbi is going to be there like, what the hell? I've been talking about this since day one. And then watch, even Mehdi Hassan, I could see him doing that because he tried to screw over Matt Taibbi. Even Mehdi Hassan be like, did you know the Twitter files revealed this? Isn't it shocking? It'll be interesting. Corporate media is going to pretend that they're the ones who found it first. It's
as they always do, just thievery. But let's try to finish. It's hard to get through it because they're saying a lot of dumb stuff. But let's try to get through the rest of this here.
Absolutely,
American culture.
Oh, absolutely. This is a very silly ruling in terms of legalities. The First Amendment already does what he is doing, which is it protects free speech. He's like a bootstrapping legal argument. He says they can't try to influence any content that's protected First Amendment speech. Well, that's the whole question, is it protected First Amendment speech or not? He also really gives himself away when he says that it targets conservative viewpoints. If you're really going to talk about the government trying to influence social media, you wouldn't limit it to just conservative or liberal. That gives away his viewpoint.
This is where they have to act like the Twitter files didn't exist. This is where they have to act like the Twitter files. Like, why is he bringing that up? Because the evidence that was used in this case came a lot from the Twitter files. That's why, but they have to pretend like it doesn't exist. It's just sad to see. He has to come out here, and now he knows, as a legal person who knows the law, he knows this is flimsy. I've heard him speak on things where you can clearly hear that he feels stronger in his opinion. This feels like he's just, hey, go up there and make sure you give the right sort of, wink, wink, and a nod, give the right tone to why this ruling is bad.
Yeah, give the right answer so that way, the sheep don't think for themselves and realize that we're sending them to the slaughterhouse.
Exactly.
I think it makes it very difficult to follow his order for the government to know when they're stepping over that line.
They know.
And lastly, from a strictly technical standpoint, this is a preliminary injunction. You need to show irreparable harm. Where's the urgency? He engaged in months of discovery, very helpful to the conservative cause. And now he says you need to preliminarily enjoin this. There's no reason why he needs a preliminary injunction.
I mean, politically, obviously, this is going to be a moment for Republicans to rally around. This is an argument they have been making for quite some time here. And the overreach of the Biden administration when it came, especially when it was coming to the COVID era, is something that I think you're going to hear on the campaign trail, not just during the course of the Republican nomination race, Dana, but in the general election. This is going to be one of the pieces of the political argument against Biden's management.
This is pretty disgusting.
I got some,
there. Go ahead.
Yeah,
ahead.
I got something I could add to the discovery. First of all, let's talk about stuff that impacted people severely, and let's look at the progressive side for a moment, because I get what the conservatives are saying. These lawmakers really don't care about conservative free speech or speech in general. But let's talk about the progressive side. When we were covering what took place on January 6th, YouTube, in its miraculous ability to ascertain facts or make its own facts, said that we were saying that Biden was not president. We were covering a massive event that was taking place in the White House. We also had one of our videos taken down because we were covering a story where Joe Rogan was being smeared by CNN. YouTube thought that we were giving out medical misinformation, which we weren't. And then YouTube censored us another time when our colleague Kira was doing a story on adult websites that had very questionable material. Again, I got to be careful. And YouTube said we were showing adult video and imagery when we were reading articles from establishment sources. So this whole censorship wave, I can add to the discovery. I could tell you what really happens, because when you have these online services come after you and hit you and not even have any real proof or credible evidence in their claims, it severely impacts the content creator. And I know a lot of conservative content creators got hit, but a lot of us progressive ones got hit too. So it's a bigger picture than this. And I wish that, that maybe there was more of a joint effort into really getting involved in this legal situation so that all sides are heard. But there are damages done. And when we were censored for 6 months, like I said, we had a team to take care of. We had bills to pay and so much more. Once our channel was down, we could have been out. And I don't wish that on anybody, not on RBN, not even on channels that I disagree with. No one should go through that. And this is the environment we have. There's no way anyone in their right mind should be defending the fact that the Biden administration should be in contact with social media. That should not happen at all.
And I just wanted to leave this on the screen so we can look at that headline. Judge rejects Biden effort to curb conspiracies online. That's how they're selling this to their audience. Not that the judge is stopping the administration from censoring Americans' dialogue. Is that they're stopping Biden from stopping a crime from happening. You get what I'm saying? That's the selling point, which is pretty. I would say it's pretty disgusting. I'm gonna bring this down and bring up a tweet now, because this was pretty hot for several days now, or for at least since yesterday, because it happened on Tuesday. Happened yesterday, but believe it or not, Kit, I didn't find out about this until this morning when I woke up to start doing stories. I'm sorry, I didn't find out about this until like midnight, and I guess this happened way earlier in the day. And I didn't find out this until like late in the night. So I was behind, and there's a lot of people that tweeted about it. So I wanted to kind of bring some of those up. And I think the first one I saw was Aaron. Yeah, Aaron Mate. When I had retweeted him, it was like 9 hours old. Now, Kit, you have a little bit better eyes. Could you read that for me, please?
Yes, let's see. So first of all, by Aaron Mate, a ruling that could curtail efforts to fight disinformation. I love when our quote-unquote free press openly admits to supporting state censorship, and what he's mentioning is a retweet from the New York Times. Breaking news, a judge limited Biden administration officials from contacting social media sites, a ruling that could curtail efforts to fight disinformation, to which I have to say again, look, folks, disinformation, that means, I don't know, questioning the vaccine, questioning the election. Also bring up the fact that the president's son is an addict. And look, I know we're going to be talking about that later. And that,
Yeah,
I have different perspectives on that. We'll save that cherry bomb for the very end.
Yeah. And that's more of a funner story, because I mean, we are never going to be making fun of people who are addicts. It's just funny or ironic because the way that Joe Biden feels that other addicts should be treated versus his own son, and I think that's the ironic part. So let's so that's Aaron Mate. I hate to make you read all of these. So I'll read some of these.
No, so it's okay. I'll go ahead and read it. So of
all
course,
right. So let's. Glenn Greenwald, go ahead, sir.
Of course, the New York Times depicts this anti-censorship ruling as dangerous shield for disinformation. The most surreal fact of U.S. political life is that leading advocates for unified state corporate censorship are large media corporations. We could thank Bill Clinton for the Telecoms Act, folks. That's why we're here.
Yes, and I say all the time, a lot of people don't really take into account that Bill Clinton, as far as legislative wise, he is one of the worst presidents in the last 40 years.
Yes,
legislation he was able to get through, including the 1994 crime bill, Don't Ask, Don't Tell. I mean, just repealed. It was just over and over. It is truly one of the worst presidencies in modern history. Just terrible. And then this is what he tweeted on the day of, and then the one I showed earlier or just a second ago was his subsequent tweet. They've actually Glenn has actually tweeted a lot about this, but when he first heard, this is what he said: huge. A federal district judge preliminarily bans at Biden administration officials from continuing to speak and meet with big tech officials to pressure them to censor viewpoints the U.S. government dislikes. The First Amendment bars such censorship pressure. And then he posted the Washington Post article that's entitled "Judge Blocks U.S. Officials from Tech Contact in First Amendment Case." I can't bring that up because I'm blocked. So I have another article I'll bring up about this case. And let's get to that article now. And I think it's is it Consortium that I have here, which is pretty good. Actually, let me go here first because this is that Washington Post, but this is Washington Journal, but this is the what do they make it to where it's no paywall?
Thank goodness.
So let's now we can read it here. We'll read a little bit of it. But Washington Journal, judge rules. Hang on 1 second here. All right. Judge rules Biden administration likely trampled on free speech on social media. I was trying to figure out a way to close this little advertisement, but it doesn't look like I can. Let me see if that's it. No. All right. So let's continue. Preliminary injunction orders federal agencies to refrain from pressuring social media companies on censorship. And it's written by Jacob Gershom. A federal judge ruled that Biden administration likely trampled on the First Amendment rights in trying to eliminate what is saw as disinformation on social media, issuing a broad preliminary injunction limiting the federal government from policing online content. This is a big ruling, 155-page ruling, and they have it here. We're not going to go through it. Issued Tuesday, that's yesterday. U.S. District Judge Terry, is that Dougie of Louisiana barred White House officials and multiple federal agencies from contact social media companies with the purpose of suppressing political views and other speech normally protected from government censorship. The judge injunction came in a lawsuit led by the Republican attorneys generals of Mississippi and Louisiana, who alleged that Biden administration fostered a sprawling quote, federal censorship enterprise, end quote. The federal government, the lawsuit claimed, pressured social media platforms to scrub away disfavored views about COVID-19 health policy, the origins of the pandemic, the Hunter Biden laptop story, election security, and other sensitive topics. I'll read this last part and then we can close the article here. The case is among the most potentially consequential First Amendment battles pending in the court, testing the limit of government scrutiny on social media content on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, and other major platforms. That means this is a case that's going to affect us. And imagine not being censored for all those strikes you got. Imagine not having that sort of cloud over your head when we're talking on YouTube. Have you ever experienced a time when you didn't have this craziness when you were actually on YouTube, or this is right when you came on?
I'm probably looking back at the past with rose-colored glasses, but I can say that at least late 2018, all of 2019, and early 2020, before the pandemic restrictions were put on, there was a good point in Hardlands Media where I remember Daniel was working together to get additional camera gear, and we're going to hire some people to do field reporting. Do you want to know what it feels like to, like, hey, wow, we are bringing in not only the views, but subscribers, and we're going to build investigative field teams so we can do on the ground work, cover stuff in City Hall, cover stuff in neighboring states. I felt that we were so close, and then come March, it's all gone like that. And I remember again, just, oh, that dream is done. Now we have to be very careful. And I know I've gotten a lot of criticism from people like, oh, how come you're tiptoeing around eggshells? Look, I want Odyssey, Rumble, and Rockfin to really grow as networks, but YouTube is where it's at, unfortunately. And in order for us to build this platform and maintain what we've built, you have to play within the margins and try and maintain as much of your show as possible, which is why I do Rockfin and Odyssey and occasionally do original content there as well. But if we were to ever get back to that point, I think I could then say to Dan, hey, we can get new cameras. We can do some field operations. We could do what we originally wanted to do in 2020. And that would be lovely. But I'm just saying, I'm saying how I feel, but I'm seasoned enough to know that all this can go away and that we are right back to where we started from. I would love to have that opportunity, but I can't convince myself that that scenario is going to happen because I've been through what it's like to lose everything. And I don't wish that on anyone. It's a miracle that Hardlands Media is even still around.
Yeah, I remember some of the stories you told behind the scenes, not in front of the camera to us. Yeah. It's terrible. Now here is the Kit. This is the New York Times article that everybody's kind of like going after because their phrasing is like they want censorship, and it says federal judge limits Biden's officials' contacts with social media site. The order came in a lawsuit filed by the attorney generals of Missouri and Louisiana, who claim the administration is trying to silence its critics. I can't believe I haven't been blocked out yet. I guess this is my first article on New York Times in a while because usually they'll bring up this little paywall. Oh, that's it. You've reached your limit. But let's read. A federal judge in Louisiana on Tuesday restricted the Biden administration from communicating with social media platforms about broad swaths of content online. A ruling that could, this is the part where everybody is screenshotting, a ruling that could curtail efforts to combat false and misleading narratives about the coronavirus pandemic and other issues.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay, so let's talk about false issues and everything else, okay? Because I actually gave commentary on that clown BS that Emma Vigeland did with Francesca saying, oh, yeah, Fox News is terrible, but MSNBC is great. Shout out to Matt Orfla, who put together like a 2-minute and 50-second video collage showing all of MSNBC's lies, including the Hunter Biden laptop story. So false and misleading narratives, I've seen corporate media do that more than anyone on social media. So don't give me that goddamn crap. Not yelling at you, but just like it's just enraging to me because the establishment media has been giving misleading and false narratives to the people. And hell, I'm willing to bet that the viewing audience right now watching can give 10, 20, 30 examples because we've all seen it firsthand.
Absolutely. And I will continue with the article. We're just about to hit our target. So thank you for those that have been liking the stream. But let me continue with the article. The order, which could have significant First Amendment implications, is a major development in a fierce legal fight over the boundaries and limits of speech online. It was a victory for Republicans who have often accused social media sites like Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube of disproportionately taking down right-leaning content, sometimes in collaboration with government. Democrats say the platforms have failed to adequately police information and hateful speech, leading to dangerous outcomes, including violence. In the ruling, Judge Terry A. Dougie, I think that's it, or Dougie, Dutty, of the U.S. District Court for the Western District of Louisiana, said that parts of the government, including the Department of Health, Human Services, and the Federal Bureau of Investigation could not talk to social media companies for, quote, the purpose of urging, encouraging, pressuring, or inducing any manner the removal, deletion, suppression, or reduction of content containing protected free speech. And I'll end it there with those two articles in the books. But what I do have to say about this, as we're closing this particular segment down, the shock and outrage of the language in the court case, this is going to be the opportunity for people like Jank and Anna to accuse us of aligning with right-wingers, because the judge happened to use some of the same language, kid, that we use. Like, we already were calling this Orwellian. We were already calling this. So now they're going to see you guys are using the same language. They'll be, oh, damn. So this is going to be another opportunity for them to do that.
I don't know. I've been noticing a little bit of a change, a little bit of a tone that's starting to take over TYT. I don't know. They're a little late to the game. I don't know if you've seen some of that recent drama or stuff that's happening with TYT.
I saw her on a new interview, and I guess I haven't seen her interview, but something of phrasing along the lines, I'm leaving the left, or she's leaving the left, or something like that is what I heard. So, but I don't know. If you know more than me, please fill us in.
I'm still trying to catch up on it too. I just haven't. I've managed to look into a little bit. I think this has to deal with her infamous falling out with a lot of these activists when it comes down to, I guess, gender identity, right? And how she didn't want to be called like a breeding person or a birthing person, and that she didn't want to be called a Karen. And I guess that set off a lot of more diehard activists who are more Puritan. And so I mean, I can understand it. I can understand where Anna's coming from that perspective. She's telling people how she feels. It doesn't mean that people need to jump down their throat, but okay, well, now she's changing her tone a little bit. And I have to say it's interesting to watch. And all this time they kept on smearing and yelling at Jimmy Dore. Now things have turned, and now they're dealing with the Puritans.
Yes, it's just a saga. It's just a saga with them, because when you don't have anything really to fight for, you got to have these sort of personality fights. Vanguard engages in that sort of personality fights, but
Vanguard has to do that. Vanguard has to do that because
that's their only way.
Yeah, when they talk about you, that's their bread and butter. When they talk about anybody from RBN, they need that for the views. It's like, oh man, we're really low on the view count. Let's find out something bad about RBN. Let's say they got nothing but white supremacists in their audience, because Revolutionary Blackout Network will attract all the white supremacists for some reason, and all the white supremacists will watch RBN. What? Get out of here with that.